I played the Budokai trilogy nonstop as a kid. I remember I was in 3rd grade and I was in my desk kind of just like shaking with excitement because all I wanted to do was go home and play Budokai 3 as future Trunks fighting Kid Trunks. For some reason, I thought that was the coolest thing on earth. And honestly, it still is. I really did have a video game that allowed me to do that. And isn't that beautiful? I could play as Gohan as a kid, a teenager, and an adult. That's fire. Even though Teen Gohan is actually just 9 years old and adult Gohan is just 16, but semantics. So the thought that I didn't need to go home in 3rd grade, I could just play Budokai, and the second I get out of school, Budokai on the go? No way. That is literally unimaginable, and yet that is the promise that Shin Budokai with the PSP gave us. You know, the portable Budokai experience that kids like me always dreamt of. So it's been 2 decades since then, and I only have one question to ask. Does the first entry of the PSP Budokai games still hold up? And yes, I said trilogy. Oh my god! Only one way to find out. My name is Josue. Welcome to the Panic Brothers channel, and let's talk some Shin Budokai. So you're introduced to this beautiful opening for the game that has an insanely good song attached to it. Watching this again just brought back so many nostalgic memories for me. I played Shin Budokai a little bit too much as a kid. In the main menu, you're introduced to some regular old options. Nothing particularly stands out here. Arcade mode is normal for fighting games and isn't anything crazy. Z-Trial just has a survival and time battle mode. Training is literally just that. It's just training, but you do get to set it to be an actual fight against the CPU. So this also kind of acts as a versus mode. There's a profile card option here, which allowed you to customize an online identification card that you can have. But seeing as how I can't access the internet, there's pretty much no point for this nowadays. The roster of the game is pretty standard for what a portable Budokai experience should be able to offer. You have your regular Z Warriors, except Tien and Yamcha are only relegated to cutscenes. No Kid Gohan, but teen and adult Gohan are here. Is here, are here, English. Android 18 made the cut here, as well as some major villains like Frieza, Cell, Cooler, and Broly. No Fat Boo or Super Boo, which is unfortunate, but Kid Boo happens to have made the roster at least. The game loosely adapts the story of one of the greatest Dragon Ball Z movies of all time, Fusion Reborn, so the 2 additions of the roster for the Budokai series is Janemba and Pekan. Characters who didn't even appear in the movie find their way here as well, like future Trunks and Vegito, which I only assume are included so the game can have all the fan favorites. No GT or End of Z content included, so I'm sorry, but Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and Oob, y'all just couldn't make the cut. We'll talk about the story mode a little bit later, but the game does offer you the opportunity to play as every single character in the roster at least once. For all of the love that I have towards Budokai games, it's pretty obvious these games aren't completely balanced, and that kind of continues and bleeds its way into Shin Budokai. Some characters are so rough to play as, with characters like Gotenks and especially Cooler having moves that take forever to wind up and land, giving the enemy plenty of time to just come in and attack. With the amount of energy he has, Janemba is clearly the most broken character in the game. Playing as him awards you high damage moves that have so much range. Piccolo and Trunks are probably 2 of my favorite characters to play as in the game, with Trunks having such good range with his sword while not feeling too broken, and same idea for Piccolo when he extends his arms. Frieza also isn't half bad either. Characters tend to have similar moves to one another, barely much variety in special attacks here. The Kamehameha is used for way too many characters, with Gohan having the Kamehameha and Super Kamehameha for 2 of his 3 special attacks. The AI usually always predicts when you're about to use your forward special, so it almost never works. And you can just spam your ultimate attack like the Spirit Bomb or the Super Kamikaze attack to cheese every single fight if you're having a tough time in a battle. Things like this can end up making the game feel dull at times, where you can walk away from almost every fight knowing you can win if you just keep charging up and doing your ultimate over and over and over again. Along with that, playing through the game, you'll notice several issues. For starters, the polish on this game isn't the greatest. I mean, besides the graphics. For a portable Budokai game on the PSP in 2006, this game is beautiful and visually stunning. It doesn't feel too dissimilar to Budokai 3 for the PS2 at all. The developer of the game, Dimps, has a consistent track record of putting out some extremely solid games. They did the entire Budokai trilogy, but also worked on some other classics like the Sonic Advance trilogy, Kirby, and a couple of games I actually made videos on already. Sorry for the self-promo. One Piece for the GBA, and my personal favorite, Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure. With a catalog of excellent video games like that, it's absolutely wild to see some of the hiccups the game presents itself with. For starters, there's an insane amount of misspellings. It's crazy because that's probably one of the easiest things to fix when it comes to polishing. Yet throughout the entirety of the game, there's just so many hiccups you'll notice, like absort, save, and sound. At the end of story mode, Pecan says, "The ones who saves the world are the I can't do anything for." I can't even begin to guess what that means. But there's this segment towards the end of chapter 4 that just had misspells back to back to back. Otiamti Trao Chambo Intantamistong. Like, bro, come on, it's embarrassing to have this many misspellings and grammar mistakes. It also feels like so many characters just act out of character, if you will. Frieza is completely okay with Cooler being the ruler of the galaxy and even says thank you. Chi-Chi apparently encouraged Gohan to stop studying. That's so not Chi-Chi. Vegeta fires a Kamehameha. Yeah, Vegeta. A Kamehameha. Yeah. And the game is just littered with these awful excuses for why characters fight each other. Usually it's just because characters want to spar with each other, which that's whatever, I guess. That's as Dragon Ball of an excuse as possible when it comes to characters fighting. But the worst and most egregious example is this fight towards the end of the game. Android 18 runs into Goku and fights him because he's a pervert. She brings up how he used to pat girls back in the day and has Master Roshi, the king of perv, as his master. Goku ends up bringing valid arguments like that was all in the past when he was a kid, and her husband, Krillin, is also a student of Master Roshi. How is it now, suddenly, out of nowhere, now, when the world is in danger, the moment when 18 brings all of this up towards Goku, someone she's had a relationship with to some degree for years by this point in the game's story? It's so stupid. And while this is the most egregious example, there's plenty of other moments kind of similar to this. Obviously, the real meat and potatoes of the game is its story mode, Dragon Road. When I say the game loosely adapts Fusion Reborn, I mean that word. I mean loosely. The story of Dragon Ball Z Shin Budokai is written more as a really bad fanfiction with the way they set up some of the fights and storylines. You have 5 different chapters, and every chapter after the first one features a branching path you can take for alternate storylines you can follow. The game starts with everyone just sparring because, why not? But Pecan comes down and the events of Fusion Reborn slowly start to come out. Evil villains from Dragon Ball history start showing up everywhere like the movie, so every Z warrior gets together to take them down. You have this stupid moment in chapter 2 where Gohan is wiped out from fighting Broly. Yeah, okay, that makes sense, it's Broly, right? So Tien and Yamcha step in to help. Tien and Yamcha against Broly. You see the issue, right? And they somehow managed to hold him off. How? How does Yamcha and Tien hold off Broly? How? There is no universe where the two of Yamcha and Tien can fight Broly. They literally should be dead right now. There's always some weird mumbo jumbo that's included in the dialogue that only serves to drag this story out as much as possible. You'll notice this pretty quickly because the Gogeta versus Janemba fight, you know, the final fight of the movie, happens at the end of chapter 2. Yet, there are 3 more chapters after this. So the finale of the movie doesn't even happen halfway into this game. The story is literally dragging itself out in order to achieve a different ending from the movie, yet still somehow be similar enough to the ending of the movie to make it all make sense. It's pretty bad. The branching paths get even crazier in Chapter 3, where one path actually is just a story mode of sorts for Cell as he goes on a revenge tour. Teen Gohan randomly pops up here, and there's a moment where Goku is angry at adult Gohan for not telling him that he has a son. This is kind of funny, but also just really stupid. Gohan is 18 here, so for Goku to assume that Gohan has a 9-year-old boy is to assume Gohan had a son at just 9 years old. Please, Goku. Oh. Teen Gohan is also very confident against Broly, which, bro, you should not be confident against Broly. No one should. Tien and Yamcha are not role models. Maybe Tien a little bit, but not Yamcha. Yet they're both holding him off, so what do I know, right? Screw me and my long years of being a Dragon Ball fan. Teen Gohan is also somehow influenced by the negative energy of Janemba's remnants, to the point that he turns evil himself, so the chapter ends with Goku needing to fight a Super Saiyan 2 Gohan in Kaioken. Even for Goku, this is pretty ridiculous. Like, why aren't you just turning Super Saiyan at least? Kaioken, now, of all times, against Super Saiyan 2 Gohan? I know Goku's strong, but that's disrespectful. And Majin Vegeta is here somehow for story reasons. Chapter 4 sees future Trunks get teleported to this timeline as well due to a strange trans-dimensional hole he found. He encounters Android 18 at first, and her big reveal of being married to Krillin is actually pretty funny. From here, future Trunks is just on sight with his enemies. I do appreciate that. It's around this time though that you begin to notice enemies in the game start fighting with an insane amount of energy bars to the point that fights begin to feel unfair. Not impossible since you can still just spam your ultimate attacks, but this game would definitely be incredibly hard were it not for that cheese factor. Even with that though, this fight as future Trunks versus Janemba messed me up really bad. Chapter 5 is rather straightforward, although still difficult. It serves as a boss rush of sorts as you play as the different Z Warriors taking down each of the main villains that escaped from Hell. HFIL. Sorry. Krillin saves 18 from Frieza and is somehow able to take him down. Gohan takes down Cooler after he took Videl hostage. Future Trunks takes down Cell with a triple Kamehameha. How does Kid Trunks know the Kamehameha? Probably from Vegeta, who also somehow knows it too. And is definitely not prideful enough to not teach his son, his enemy, his rival's signature move. Of course not. Vegeta loves the Kamehameha. And so does Kid Trunks. Apparently. As according to Shin Budokai. After defeating Broly as Goku, you get the big reveal that Teen Gohan is only here because he's dreaming. How does that make sense? At the end of the day, I know I'm definitely nitpicking, but it doesn't take away from how ridiculous this story is. Even for Dragon Ball. Actually, I'll take that back. Dragon Ball, for the most part, doesn't have as ridiculous of a story as this ever. Even in its filler movies. It's everywhere. You get to play as Kid Buu, which is cool, but it's a weird situation as playing as him gives you only 3 bars of health, which is ridiculous as the game tries to pit him as this insanely strong being, but you don't really feel like it when Pekan is somehow an absolute beast when controlled by the CPU. The best thing here is that you only get one branch at the end. You get to pick whether you want to play as Vegito or Gogeta to end the game, which is weird considering this is a Fusion Reborn story and Janemba's the main villain of that, but whatever. Vegito gets his own sideline story, a character who wasn't even in the movie anyway, so I'll let it pass this time. Gogeta's branch has his fight as Janemba disguised as Vegito, which I'm not even sure how Janemba can do that. It's just a way for the player to experience this dream matchup where the two Goku-Vegeta fusions can finally fight one another. And to no one's surprise, the game ends with Gogeta versus Janemba and the credits roll with this fire Goku running animation. Now, with all of that said, does Shin Budokai still hold up? It's honestly pretty tough for me to say. The game doesn't really offer much else for you to play when you beat the story mode. By the time you finish story mode, every single character is unlocked. And as we already said, Dragon Road can be a drag at times, considering how bad the story could be at times. Not to mention the amount of grammar mistakes. There's no bonus content here. I mean, there's a bunch of profile card stuff if you're into that, but you can't use any of it since you can't go online. There's a network mode here, but again, you can't go online, so what do? Whatever modes that are left over in this game are just modes that are standard for all fighting games and are just kind of there just to be there. I mean, it's a fighting game, so an arcade mode is natural. It needs to be there, really. But doesn't mean that it's not bare bones, right? It does give me this overall impression that the game was rushed for development. You know, I think Dimps was just kind of ordered to get a Budokai game out on the PSP as soon as possible. However, at the end of the day, despite the issues the game has, it's still a Budokai game on the go. The core fundamentals of the Budokai series is here, with 2 additional characters not playable in the regular trilogy on console. For that alone, I think the game still deserves some recognition. On an emulator, maybe not, since you have, other way better Budokai games you could play. But if you have a PSP still, this is something definitely worthy of trying out. And definitely isn't bad at all if you just want to experience every single thing that Dragon Ball Z as a franchise has to offer. If you like the Budokai games, you're gonna like this game for the most part. Now, Shin Budokai is still just the first game in a trilogy of games to the PSP. The third game is a game I'm very familiar with, and I can't wait to talk about it on this channel. But the sequel, Another Road, is a game I somehow completely missed as a kid. So I honestly can't wait to dive into it and experience it for the first time ever. Until then, my name is Josue. Talk to y'all next time.